with his printing press.
But of course, they can't solve it. They're making it worse. What do you think lies ahead for us?
Look, I think it's going to be a disaster. I think the government can continue to misdiagnose this problem. They're going to continue to conclude that the reason their stimulus packages aren't working is because the doses are too small. They're going to keep upping the ante on this stuff. They're going to keep spending money and trying all kinds of Keynesian remedies, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse. And eventually the dollar is going to fall through the floor. Consumer prices are going to head up into the stratosphere. And at some point along the way, the government is going to, again, start attacking the symptoms of inflation rather than the cause. They're going to start imposing price controls on energy, on food products. The result of that is going to be shortages, blackouts, brownouts, long lines, public civil unrest, looting, higher crime. I think eventually the government is going to impose capital controls. I think they're going to make it very difficult or expensive for Americans to move their money offshore, to buy foreign currencies, to buy precious metals. The government is going to continue to attack the symptoms. Ultimately, we could see a new wave of emigration as younger Americans try to leave the country in order to take advantage of better opportunities abroad. And then maybe the government will start cracking down on that and trying to force people to stay in the country so they can keep taxing them.
And, of course, they already say that even if you want to leave the country and give up your citizenship, they claim the right to tax you for an additional 10 years.
Yeah, and they've also made it more expensive just recently. The government enacted a bill that says if you give up your citizenship, that they will tax as ordinary income the appreciated value of all your assets on the date that you leave. So if you have a business or you own a stock portfolio or anything that's gone up in value, they're going to tax it as the price of leaving the country. And when the governments try to make it more and more expensive to leave the country, it's usually for a reason. And when people want to leave, the government should re-examine why wealthy people want to get out of here. Instead of figuring out how to punish them when they do, maybe we should change the policies that are forcing the most successful Americans to want to get out. But the important thing that people have to understand is that free markets work. And that the problem is when government interferes in the market and distorts it. Everybody points to what happened, let's say, in the housing market as some kind of failure of capitalism, that there wasn't enough regulation. Well, that couldn't be more wrong. In fact, if you look at the brokerage industry, the banking industry and brokerage, they are the most highly regulated industries probably in the country. Yet they're all bankrupt. It wasn't because there wasn't enough regulation. In fact, the free markets regulate themselves. Everybody is greedy, right? But everybody is afraid of losing. There's always a risk, and there's a trade-off. And in the free market, the risk of loss always counterbalances the greed for profit, and they check each other. But what happens is the government enters in the equation and tries to remove the element of risk. They create a moral hazard, whether it's by Freddie and Fannie guaranteeing mortgages. And now loans are going to be made that in the free market wouldn't be made because the borrower isn't creditworthy. But when the government steps in and guarantees the loan, all of a sudden there's no reason to worry about the risk of loss. And when the Federal Reserve makes borrowing money very inexpensive, then, borrowing is cheap, so to finance the speculation on leverage is a lot cheaper, and so it encourages more of it. And so governments come in and they remove the barriers that would exist in a free market. And then there's all these problems that get created, and now the government is able to blame the free market. They're able to say, well, there wasn't enough regulation, which is nonsense. Now, sure, there should have been more regulation on Freddie and Fannie because there was no market regulation of them because they had the government guarantee. But, of course, had they never created Freddie and Fannie, then there would have been nothing to regulate. If they just allowed interest rates to be set in a free market, if creditors had to worry about the borrower's ability to repay the loan, then interest rates would have been higher, down payments would have been higher, loan-to-income ratios would have been lower, and we never could have inflated the housing bubble.
Peter Schiff, thanks so much for being the voice of truth that you are, and thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Sure, thanks for having me.
You've been listening to The Lew Rockwell Show, produced by LewRockwell.com, the best-read libertarian website in the world. If you'd like to advertise on this podcast or on the website, email advertise@LewRockwell.com. And thanks for listening.